We're recording. So, yeah, thanks for jumping in today. Our basic MO is pretty free form. We'll do an introduction and such, and usually kind of flow actors to design to weird philosophical stuff and wrap it up at the end. So, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I have a feeling
Sounds
we'll
good.
touch on various things that you've done full episodes on already, but
Sounds great.
But we haven't gotten it to it yet, so yeah.
I haven't thought of an opening.
Oh, okay. You had some
Oh, yeah, I think
three
I had
hours.
one, but yeah, I've forgotten it because I just woke up. Oh,
Watching
damn. Yeah, this
steam
doesn't
to
happen
my
very
ear. Yeah,
Yeah.
I 2009. I know that. I got
I
that
know
on
it's
Twitter.
2009.
I know you know that.
Fine. All right, here we go. In the year 2009, James Cameron could see you.
Oh, no, the delivery's all wrong though, isn't it? I see you.
Yeah.
Pleading, kind of pleading,
Well,
right?
I'm not James Cameron.
Okay.
I
That's
wish I
true.
was James Cameron. You're listening
So
to James Cameron Month in the Sci-Fi Sanctuary. I'm not James Cameron, but I'm Luke.
this is Matt. You already said where we are. That's right. Would you prefer to have an avatar or a surrogate?
Oh, Avatar for sure.
Okay. Be difficult to go to the mall with an avatar though. They're
Yeah,
really
but
tall.
I don't need a surrogate because I'm already like buff and handsome.
Okay.
You only need a surrogate if you're a schlub. So today's film is kind of the reason we're doing a Cameron month. It's Avatar in preparation for later this month, Avatar: The Way of Water, and we're joined by the man who does a full Avatar podcast, Sivako: The Road to Avatar. Shaun Alexander, say hello.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no, thanks for joining us. I have been listening to your podcast, not every episode, because I don't want to see, I really don't hear or see anything about the new film. I want to go in as blind as possible.
Ooh.
Um, but I've listened to some of the episodes about the previous film and both the Terminator episodes, because T2 is my favorite film of all time. And you always start your episode by asking your guests their history with Avatar. But
Mm.
I'm actually very interested to hear your history of Avatar. How does someone go, the step of making an Avatar podcast?
Yeah, like it's kind of a weird thing to be like, oh yeah, I'm just going to do a podcast just solely on one film and
Mm,
see where I can branch off from there. So my history was with it is I saw it in 2009. I saw it. I was 17 at the time. Actually, I either saw it 2009 or 2010. It was in that sort of Christmas New Year period,
right.
and it was like one of those films that at the time it really stood out as being amazing. I then felt like I didn't visit it again because people didn't revisit it unless it was at the cinema, really. And
Mm,
it came to about, I think it was when I was at university about 4 or 5 years ago, and a lecturer mentioned to me an essay on Avatar, and I read it and I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then the 10-year anniversary came around in 2019, and I wrote an article about it, about how what's happened to Avatar since then. And they'd done the theme park in Florida, done the rides. I love that stuff. Amazing. Really good if you get a chance to go do it. And yeah, it kind of branched from there that I was like, I'm just going to keep revisiting it. And I watched it like a couple times over the first like COVID lockdowns, and it was incredibly enjoyable. It was one of those ones that I felt like you could just like leave on it in the background and just have a good time wherever you jumped in on it. And yeah, I kind of just decided from there to be like, okay, what does it mean that this is the biggest film of all time, box office wise? Why is it the biggest film? And like how can you use that as a way to reflect on the whole industry? You know,
mm.
how did Cameron get to where he was to make Avatar?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
also watched it 2009, slightly older than you. I think I would have been 18, 19 when it came out. Um, and yeah, I get what you mean. It's not a film. It's a film that you want to have the best possible experience with. So I didn't watch it over and over like I would say T2. I have caught it in the intervening years, I think, on TV a couple of times. And then, yeah, in preparation for this, I picked up the Blu-rays, and like 3 nights ago I watched the extended edition, and then last night I watched the theatrical cut. But yeah, that was probably the first time watching it in 5-6 years. But between rewatching it, listening to your podcast, watching some YouTube stuff, I've gone from, I like that film, that was a cool action film with nice characters, to like, oh, actually, this film had some stuff to say, and I think this is a really good film. So yeah, I've really developed my love for Avatar, and now I'm very excited for the new one.
Yeah, I had the 2009 movie rush. Maybe it's opening night. I don't remember. I'm way older, so I was already like married and stuff. And I do remember that some friends came by. We were gonna go see it in 3D or whatever, and then my wife started to get like the flu, so he set her up in a chair and went to see Avatar while she had to watch Revenge of the Nerds 2, Nerds in Paradise. A very different movie.
Yeah, just a touch.
Yeah, they're speaking, some people are like, oh, Avatar's, cultural positioning is weird or whatever, but yeah, I think we've all decided to like forget the Revenge of the Nerds franchise exists at all, possibly.
Maybe for the best.
Yeah. Oh, it is for a best. I heard. Sorry, I just heard a few years ago they actually were going to do a remake, and somewhere in the remaking of it, the studio execs were like, "What the hell are you doing?" and just pulled the plug.
Rightfully so. Look, it's those films have questionable morals.
Yes.
And that takes some doing for the studio to say, let's not reboot a franchise.
I mean, there'd been some other complication. No, I think it was like the university was like, "What are you doing?" And then the studios, "Yeah, what are you doing?" So they gave up on that. This one, of course, is fame a world to dive into, and hopefully, I guess watching it last night or whatever, I was like, "Oh yeah, this really does need some sequels," because there's a lot of corners unexplored. As far as the side videos I put on YouTube. Luke, can you guess which video I put on as my
You watched a
extra
bunch of
character?
videos of the theme park?
That's right. And the animatronic shaman is really cool. So
Yeah.
It's so cool. That's like I think that's the thing that like re-sparked my interest. I went in like the first like year period that it opened in Florida, and I was like blown away. I was like, wow. I didn't expect it to be this good. And I've been since and done like Star Wars Land and all that sort of stuff. And Pandora is still better than that by a long stretch, like the immersion of it.
yeah, I have heard that is a you need to be there thing because of the lighting and such. Where is I found very nice quality videos on YouTube, but it's a little different, isn't it? So Luke, I guess here's where we're gonna plug in that little just refresher because there's probably a few people listening that maybe have not watched Avatar for a few minutes. So here we go.
I've already pre-recorded the plot. Don't worry.
give it 3 seconds silence. I could spot it real easily because recently I've been going nuts trying to find the cuts. That should
make sure you cut telling us that as well.
Yeah, I'll cut yeah. No, now I can spot it really easily.
You're laughing, Shaun, but that's the sort of thing that he would leave in.
I've done that before. I've done that before as well.
This one's weird, just cast wise, because we have a lot of big stars, but the biggest star, Worthington is he's kind of a weird Hollywood. He's not quite a flash in the pan because he's in like 10 major blockbusters, right? But it was kind of like there was a year of Sam Worthington and then there wasn't anymore.
I think he's perfect here because it couldn't be a big star. Like if it had been someone we already knew from a bunch of other stuff, you'd just be looking at him the whole time. I was like, oh, look, it's Leo DiCaprio doing Leo DiCaprio stuff. But because he was basically an unknown in Avatar, he was just a blank slate, and the character is a blank slate. That's the point of the character. He's an empty cup, as he says. So I think he worked here because, like, yeah, he's just about got leading man charm, but he wasn't a popular leading man.
Clash of the Titans, maybe not quite so much. Because after Avatar,
I don't know. Maybe he like Mark Hamill because he had a couple of films, but then he did pretty quickly disappear. Maybe just because James Cameron's had him locked in a basement making Avatar 2 for 10 years. But
Yeah, that could be the case. You thought Kubrick was out for you. Watch out for James Cameron.
But because yeah, after this, what was it like? Clash of the Titans, kind of crap. Terminator Salvation, maybe there was a chance for him to be good in it, but then Christian Bale was like, "No, actually, I'm the star." Write out all of
He
his
was like,
scenes
I
from the
am.
conclusion.
He's literally like, I am the star, and calls like the most fuss on set as well, because that's when he did all the
That's the
screaming at
famous
the
rant. Yeah,
yeah.
because apparently he like basically rewrote the script so that John Connor would be the main hero, and Sam Worthington's character got like written out for the final act.
Yeah, I think we just based. I'm looking at his
That's
filmography
basically his
now, and
career, right? Then he does
that's
a. Isn't there a sequel to Clash of the Titans?
uh
There was
Wrath
two
of
of
the
them.
Titans.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I didn't see that one.
I didn't even know that existed. Okay. Uh,
I think that
yeah,
kind of shows you though that, so obviously like he kind of started off, Avatar was like his first big break. Aside from, I think Terminator might have come out the same year, which
I
is
think
weird in
James Cameron
itself.
put him on Terminator though, so
It
probably
then
he
must have been.
filmed Avatar first, but then it took a bazillion years to do the effects. To be fair,
I think that's how it worked out. And clearly, they whoever was looking at this casting for Avatar was like, "Man, we should just get on this Sam Worthington guy. We don't know who he is. Just get him in." But it kind of shows, like, yeah, what do you do once you like headline the biggest film, like the biggest box office film? Do you go and try and do more big box office hits? And clearly, the answer was kind of no. Don't try and
well,
maybe do other bits.
you say that, but then you've got Zoe Saldana, who then was a major character in the film that took Avatar's record briefly. She's
Yeah,
Gamora in Endgame.
I
oh,
suppose.
okay.
Yeah, Zoe Saldana is such an interesting one because obviously she's probably more known for her like character, the fact that she doesn't look like any of her characters now. Because
Yeah,
obviously, yeah, like her two biggest are Neytiri and Gamora, where she's just in various different color schemes.
she does have
And
Uhura though.
yeah, I suppose that's another. Wow, yeah, I did an episode on her recently, and her career is ridiculous because she was in the
Yeah.
first Pirates of the Caribbean as well, which is madness.
Oh wow, I didn't know that one.
Yeah, because
It's only a small role.
I just seen her in Star Trek, of course. So I didn't quite make the connection. I think when I first saw Avatar, but she wasn't quite like she definitely has grown in stature since then. I'm
I will
looking at
say though, she is fantastic in Avatar.
Mm.
Like Sam Worthington, I'd say he's fine. We often say that on this podcast. An actor is like he's not necessarily a good actor, but he's a charming actor, and sometimes that's all you need for a leading man. Like I will say, there are a lot of lines where his Australian comes through his American accent.
It's a hybrid accent, definitely.
Yeah.
It's but hey, I think
They
that's
never
part of the
say he's
charm of
not.
him.
They never explicitly
Yeah.
say he's not for part Australian, so sure.
Why not?
Whereas, yeah, like Zoe Saldana really inhabits like the character of Neytiri. She's so emotional and so raw and like believable. Yeah, really, really good.
oh, yeah, okay. Now I was before we started recording, I was telling Luke about my pagoda climbing dream, and yeah, I'm like, okay, that must be because I watched the Navi climbing around on all those rocks. Yeah, I just had an image of her doing that because of course she would. So
Yeah.
and then there's the truly big names that all have relatively small parts. Of course, Sigourney Weaver. We'll give her a bigger than small part in this one for sure. But yeah,
So
yeah.
I think I'm stealing this from you, Sean, but is it right that James Cameron has said that Grace is like his self-insert character?
So this is a really interesting thing. I've only found this quote in one article. And I had to
Okay.
do a lot of searching for this article. But I remember reading it like months and months ago, being like, yeah, this is really interesting. And it makes sense because her character is Grace Augustine. She's like the person who's like pushing for look after the environment, don't destroy the land that we've just visited. And it kind of makes sense that Cameron would self-insert himself into the film in a way, and by putting himself as her character, he's sort of being like, yeah, like I'm the level-headed person trying to be like, hey, look, let's not destroy the whole place, maybe we can learn something from it.
Got himself
Okay.
shot.
Yeah.
Yeah
But yeah, I don't. I guess I should look at her thing or filmography. But yeah, I do remember when I saw Avatar, kind of being like, whoa, oh, I haven't seen her for a while. Because I guess on my personal radar, the last one that I'd really thought about was Galaxy Quest.
Yeah, was Evolution before or after Galaxy Quest?
A
Evolution was
little bit
after.
after, a little bit
Yeah, I
after,
think
but
she's not even in that much, is she?
yeah, but that's about the same time. And I do remember that being a great movie, but I haven't seen it since it was like, maybe new on DVD.
But yeah,
So
I think she'd been doing a lot of sort of cameo stuff, but not playing big roles.
that sounds
Yeah.
likely.
I mean, maybe she was just taking it easy. I think she could afford to by the time the 2000s rolled around.
Well, this is
Yeah,
it. Yeah, like she had a career in like the 80s, 90s, which is like so incredible that yeah, she could take it easy. Let her have a rest. Why not?
oh, she was in Be Kind Rewind. I forgot about that. Okay.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's good. I like that one.
The Village, which I think a lot of people decided to forget about after I saw it.
Yeah,
And before that, yeah, we go all the way back to Galaxy Quest. Yeah,
there
okay.
you go.
No credit. Oh wait, was Evolution before? Oh, I don't think she was credited for that,
Oh,
at least not officially.
have I made up that she was even in it?
I think you made up she was in it, to be perfectly
Whoops.
honest. I'm gonna go with that because IMDb would list the uncredited roles, wouldn't it? They usually do.
Oh, I know what I'm thinking. I don't know why I thought Evolution. I think I'm thinking of Paul, where she shows
Oh,
up briefly at the end. Very
that's
different
what I had in
film.
mind.
Yeah.
Okay,
I had
okay,
Paul
there we
in mind
go.
as well because she shows up as like an FBI agent or something.
Yeah. You've got Michelle Rodriguez in this film just playing Michelle Rodriguez.
So, well, she has to get killed, right?
Yep.
I think she dies in everything.
Well, at least in Fast and Furious, she dies and comes back.
Okay. So she's also Jesus then. Okay.
Yeah. She's my
That's
personal
cool.
Jesus.
Yeah. But yeah, she's. I mean, because Lost, she showed up. I think to the same thing. How many movies did she do that in? It's a trope. So
It's definitely a trend of hers. Yeah.
yeah. Who else is Giovanni Ribisi? That's a weird one to see because he's a very like around 2000 actor, right? This is already, although I was about to say it's already past his sell through date, but I was looking at his thing and seeing he's on the recent show, The Offer, which is I guess a dramatic retelling of the making of The Godfather, I believe. So
Okay.
Yeah.
yeah,
Isn't he
which I've
also
heard
in
good
Ted?
things about. Well, dude, that's a really long time ago, isn't it? But yes, he is.
Plus, Ted is like a big nostalgia piece, I guess. So
Right.
that doesn't
So
suggest that he's modern.
but I remember when I
Yeah.
saw Avatar already being like, "Oh, there he is." I remember him. He was already nostalgia for me when I first saw Avatar.
So I basically just knew him from Friends when I saw him in Avatar.
Okay. I was basically just what.
Genuinely, that's like all I remember him from. And I think you know what? I think he's done a TV series. It was on Amazon or something. Something Pete. I can't remember what it's called. Lucky Pete.
I think you're right. Yeah.
Something.
I just sort of remember
Basically,
the
I think
poster.
he's like a gambler or something like that. I think.
He's the guy in the not cool chair in this movie, I guess.
The other big role in this film, I literally just know from this film, which is Stephen Lang as Colonel Quaritch. And he looks like he could be one of James Cameron's CGI creations because he's just such a perfect, big, buff, chiseled, square-headed. He looks exactly like Chip Hazard from Small Soldiers.
Yeah, you know what? That is if you had to like like do a human cast for the Small Soldiers, perfect.
Yep.
Spot on. The guy, and this is the thing as well. I can't remember. I think he was like in his like late 50s when he filmed it as well. And the guy is ripped, like,
Nice,
ripped, like Arnie levels.
Yeah,
because there's a certain level of should they you go get Lee Army, right? But he I don't think he's that ripped. So
well, also I
the
don't think
opposite.
you couldn't hate Arnie enough.
That's
Like
true.
I know
Yeah.
Arnie has played villains before, but I don't think he can play a proper villain anymore because, like, even as the villain, I'd be rooting for him because he's Arnie. He'd have to do some like real heinous shit just to like make the audience hate him. Whereas this guy, he just is the military. Like, well, I'm sure we'll talk about this later, but people go on the the crap comment of, oh, no one can name any characters from Avatar, is because you don't need to remember this guy's name. He is just the army. He's Soldier Man.
I don't know if you guys have seen him, but he was in Don't Breathe. He was.
Is he the old guy
he's
in
the
that?
blind guy. Yeah, he's the blind guy.
Yeah, he didn't look quite as ripped and tough and
he's a
vibrant
bit
in that one.
Guy, but he is creepy in that movie.
Okay, yeah, this guy was born to be a villain, man.
Yeah.
I had most actually. I guess he's not quite as reprehensible in this series, but a few years ago, for some reason, I watched Terra Nova, where he is one of the leads, which was I think it was Spielberg produced, although I don't think he didn't get his hands dirty with it. So yeah, but
he's got a film coming out this year where he plays the title character, Old Man.
Well, I guess he's an old man, so it works.
Sure. Keep it simple, Don't overcomplicate it.
Oh, he's in the Conan the Barbarian remake as Kalar Zim. I just wanted to say the name Kalar Zim because I just found it. Yeah,
but there is a lot more cast, particularly made up of African actors and Native American actors who are all Na'vi. And it's so easy to forget that these actors are in the film because they're very convincingly just a bunch of aliens. But they're all played pretty well. I don't know any of them from anything else.
You do if you've seen The Boys.
I haven't. Everyone keeps telling me I need to see The Boys.
Okay.
Okay.
Sute is played by Laz Alonso, who plays, which is the weirdest. Sorry, I'm going to tell you, it's the weirdest name in The Boys. Mother's Milk is his name, MM.
Okay.
And it's the weirdest name. I don't even look. Someone in the who knows comics is going to know why it's called, why his name is that. Not a clue over here. But yeah, he's in it, and he's so good. Great stuff.
Let's look at the Red Hot Chili Peppers album. I don't know. That could be a connection, but yeah. Or
maybe
he's really into the Chili Peppers or something.
From what I've heard about The Boys, there's going to be some real creepy, fucked up reason he's called Mother's Milk.
I'm
sure there is.
I can just live in my own little bubble of naïve then. I don't think I said that word right because I just woke up. Okay.
That's right. You're an American. We'll let you off. We've spent surprisingly long time on the cast, considering this isn't really that kind of film.
Yeah, there's a lot of people in it, so
there are a lot of people in it. To be fair, yeah. But when you first go and see this film, and the way it was pushed initially, it was you were going to see this film for the spectacle and the effects. And obviously, in 2009, they were absolutely mind-blowing. How do you find the effects watching it today?
Now, I watched the extended one, and definitely there were some dodgy shots. I didn't do like you didn't watch the theatrical again, so maybe you can tell me if the extended has some slightly rougher shots. So
the Earth stuff is only in the extended, and the Earth stuff doesn't look great, and I can see why they cut it.
How about the spaceships? Those are not in theatrical because those look almost like Babylon 5 gnarly to me watching.
Oh, I thought the spaceships looked fine.
Okay, I guess
maybe there's a couple extra spaceships. You mean right at the start?
Yeah,
I think there may be a couple extra spaceship shots in the extended. Yeah,
and those are kind of rough. And human and Na'vi shots often were kind of rough looking, which I mean they'd still look weird now. So if a little more finesse, but that's something still hard to mesh.
What I found was that the first 30 minutes of the film, the effects weren't landing as hard for me, and I think all it was I had to get into the film. Once I was engrossed in the film, I wasn't looking for is that lighting correct? Oh, is that texture a bit weird? And I was just into it. Whereas at the start of the film, when you're first seeing the avatars and they're wearing more human-like clothes, you're looking that t-shirt doesn't quite move right, and that's a bit dodgy. But once I was engrossed, I'm not thinking about any of that. And I think that's one of those things that it doesn't matter how good CGI is, because your brain is telling you it's not real, it never quite looks real.
Yeah, what I was thinking is, I'm watching a Blu-ray, right? And I'm thinking
Hmm.
there's a little too much crispness sometimes, which was, I guess, how it pops out when you saw the 3D presentation on a flat screen on Blu-ray. It looks. I was almost wondering. I wonder if this actually would be better to watch on DVD for slightly hazier video
Blur some
quality.
edges a little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's
But
interesting as well. Like we've had they did the re-release and
Hmm.
they upgraded the graphics a bit on it,
Okay.
which I thought was interesting. So when it came back to the cinemas in September, they did the re-release in 3D. You could go see it 2D as well. I saw it in 3D and it wasn't the extended edition, it was still the theatrical cut, but it did look impressively fresher, I would say.
Hmm.
I think it was a lot more to do with, I think it's that thing about depth. 3D is such like a weird thing to like manage a lot of the time, especially because a lot of films are like filmed with 3D not in mind. Obviously,
Hmm.
this is probably like one of the only exceptions where they were like, yeah, we know we're going to want it to play in 3D for audiences, so we're going to like take time and effort to make sure it looks 3D. So it's more about the depth. And obviously, like the scenes in the jungle where you've got like things in the foreground, a lot happening in the background as well. I think that helps. I think it does bring a lot more life to it.
Hmm. Yeah, I was going to say, basically from the moment you meet Neytiri, I think the film looks perfect from then onwards, because what you're seeing is just, you're too mesmerized to think about the effects, basically. And like the world that's been created is like Matt said, you need sequels because you want to see so much more of this world. It's absolutely gorgeous.
Uh,
Yeah.
Maybe the mistake I made with the effects this time is I was telling you last week I read the Space Odyssey Making of 2001 book. Watch 2001 again, where all the effects still look perfect 50 years later. So, like even Avatar can't quite hold up to that, I guess.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I feel like Avatar is sitting in a bit of a 2001 place for us, where no film since Avatar has matched Avatar, because no one else will spend the time and money that James Cameron gets away with spending. Like, people are complaining a lot recently about the Marvel movies effects, and like, yeah, that's what happens when you pump out 3 a year. Whereas
3 a year is like underselling it nowadays, because obviously it's
yeah,
three movies, but then it's like the 4 TV shows plus 2
yeah.
specials on top of that. And like no wonder everyone's so like, the VFX teams are just absolutely depleted. They're so tired.
Well,
Yeah,
I've noticed on your podcast you're running into the same thing me and Matt run into, where we're not talking about the MCU, but everyone constantly brings up the MCU to
I don't
compare
have
other
a
films
choice.
to.
This is
Yeah,
like
it's
this
all
is the
there
problem.
is.
Yeah, like that's the only thing that's even tried to challenge it in a way. I suppose like visually the only other things I can think are like anything Denis Villeneuve's brought out, like Dune or Blade Runner. That's the only other things that have really tried to challenge in that sci-fi sense. But yeah, like Marvel's the only thing in terms of like pure like spectacle and scale that's ever tried to challenge Avatar in that time.
I think the reason, Matt will back me up on this, the reason I don't count Dune or Arrival as matching Avatar is because there's no color in those films.
Man,
yeah, you need some blues.
I
yeah.
love Dune. I absolutely adore Dune, but there's an awful lot of brown and gold and yellow in that film.
Yeah,
Arrival's so good, but yeah, it is like it's visually interesting for like the first like shot where you see the ship, and then the rest is kind of like, yeah, okay, cool, just back to sort of like in the room.
Yeah.
I guess I sealed the deal on my Marvel fatigue a few weeks ago when you were like, "Do you want to go see Wakanda Forever?" And I was like, "I feel like I want to say yes, but I just don't."
Well, I think I'd messaged you this, Matt. Wakanda Forever, at the time, I was, oh, this is good. But I was thinking the whole time, like, this film's going to look like shit in 2 months. Because are they seriously trying to do an underwater village like 2 months before James Cameron brings his one out?
It's really rough timing, and Aquaman learned the lesson that they were, because they were going to release the same day.
Oh,
Aquaman
wow.
2 was going to release the same day as Avatar. And but DC were just like, nope, we're not even going to try, because we are doing a different game here, and we're not going to win.
Well, there's also, as I understand it, DC has just given up releasing movies for a little while.
Yeah, they're having a break.
Well,
But
almost everything has. I mean, like you live across from a theater. It's been all like revival showings for the most part. Yeah.
they do a classic movie every 2 weeks, so that's all I've been watching recently.
Yeah. Hollywood is finally, I guess, ground to a bit of a halt still. So, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, there's just so many other things now to get into. So, it will be interesting if after the Way of Water does manage to spark up some cinema love again, because Marvel seems to have lost the ability to do that. Star Wars is like, okay, we do TV now, so and that's what people have been watching.
I would say that I don't think Avatar Way of Water will touch Avatar, but Top Gun did like crazy numbers. So I think anything that just challenges Marvel is going to get people into the theaters at this point. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I think
like people keep underestimating James Cameron, and I think he's going to get us again.
That was a weird comment I got from my dad on Maverick though, because he had just watched it. He was like, "Oh, it's pretty good. Too much spectacle." I'm like, that was the point of the movie.
too much spectacle. What? That is the first time I've ever heard that mentioned.
We want to watch the jets fly around for 40 minutes. That's the point of the movie.
No, I wanted to really get deeper into Maverick's character, is what I wanted. What makes him tick? Why doesn't he like rules? We should flash back to him at school.
Yeah, we needed more of the first Top Gun.
I really wanted to see more of like, let's drag Val Kilmer out and make him suffer on camera for us. That's what I wanted.
Oh dear.
So I think we've come to the daring conclusion that Avatar, pretty good special effects.
That's no one would say that's the consensus or anything like that.
For me, the bit that I really dig is the creatures. Like I do 2 other podcasts, one about Pokemon and one about Monster Hunter, where it is literally just every episode I get deep into one of the beasts, like the design and everything. And you could probably do a podcast like that on Avatar because there's so much design into the creatures. With the like just even like they breathe differently to creatures on Earth, and they have the 6 limbs and stuff, which I did see someone point out. The Na'vi don't look like they come from the same planet as everything else. It doesn't explain why they have 4 limbs and everything else has 6, and why they breathe through their nose but nothing else does.
Maybe they'll cover that plot point. I don't know. They got like 3 or 4 movies now to work that out.
Maybe Awa deliberately grew them to look like humans so that she could win Jake over in the future.
I mean, if we're talking out of universe, I'm sure it's probably just an executive somewhere was like, man, people aren't going to like it if you try and make us like six-legged aliens.
Well, they are supposed to be like humanity, right? This is a humanity that didn't lose its way like we did.
Yeah, exactly.
So as a film, as a piece of fantasy, it makes sense. It's just funny that they went so alien with the rest of the planet and then not quite as alien with them.
I will mention another thing, which I was talking to someone else about this recently, and it was that some of the Na'vi have feathers in their clothing. There is nothing on that planet that has feathers.
Oh yeah.
So this is a interesting conversation to be like, is there leaves on a tree that just look like feathers?
Because the arrows all have feathers as well, yeah.
Yeah, like they've come from somewhere. We don't know where, and maybe that will just, like a chicken's just going to show up at some point.
Maybe it could be a plan. I like that.
I don't know. For some reason, watching it this time, I just kept noticing the Natiri's miracle cloth.
Oh, that never bounces off her nipples.
Yeah. I was like, that's
apart from that one shot that you can find freeze framed online if you want.
Oh, I didn't bother with that. No, at the end when she puts on that like bra thing, I'm like, oh, she finally put on some clothes, right?
Right.
That's made of the same material, but I mean, yeah, I don't know why that. Well, I half know why that stood out, but but yeah, I was just like that I don't know why I noticed that so much this time. That's not how things work. So, but obviously you got to keep your rating, so I get it. But
she's got some tape under there.
I was just hearing about in the old Planet Hollywoods where they'd have the nude Sylvester Stallone petri dish demolition man like hanging
Yeah.
above you in most of the restaurants, and then they just had this weird like not quite a thong, it's just like a little patch of black to cover his junk, and it made it look like creepier that it was there. It's like when you censor things, it makes things worse.
Yeah.
So you could have eaten with your family right under a naked wax Sylvester Stallone there. Maybe
That's
I
the
did in
dream.
the 90s. I think I might have in the 90s.
What I want is the Planet Hollywood where you can eat off the naked wax Sylvester Stallone.
Yeah, turn it into a table.
That's like
I
that
will say
weird
though,
sushi thing.
visually, I think the creatures in this film are incredible. Audio wise, they basically just reuse sound effects from Jurassic Park, like every monster has for the past 30 years.
I mean, but then do you just like it's perfection? Do you mess
Yeah.
with it in a way?
Like the horse things just straight up make the raptor noise, and I'd almost say that's like a tribute, maybe, because it's so exactly the noise. But yeah, I would like to see something. Well, I guess things do use different sounds because sometimes they use Transformers sounds instead. But those are like the two sounds things can make in films: Transformers or Jurassic Park.
I'll put you on the spot then. Give us the new monster noise. I think that's
You're probably not
Scooby-Doo.
wrong. We've got whales. We've got whales in the next one. So
That's true. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah,
Maybe that will
off.
age very well.
I was gonna say it's Scooby-Doo after doing an 8-ball with Shaggy.
Whoa, Jake, sorry.
Yeah, I don't know why my last on my own notes for this viewing, my last note of the entire film, which was like 1 a.m, is Jake Sully, Matt Damon. I don't know why.
Well, Matt Damon was going to play Jake Sully. That's why.
Oh,
Really?
okay.
Yeah, and he was going to get 10% of the profits at the box office. So he would have he's talked about it in like a talk somewhere, which is basically him admitting that he made the most expensive mistake ever because it cost him like $270 million.
Yeah, he would have been able to buy a small country now. But again, that's
could have bought a zoo.
That's too much marquee, isn't it? Stat list. Would that work?
Yeah, I think well, the example I used was Leo, but I think Matt would fit exactly as well. You'd be looking at him as Matt Damon the whole time. And like Matt Damon's kind of a smart guy. Like, I don't think he'd come across as like a complete idiot jarhead in the way you need him to. I mean, if they got Team America Matt Damon in to play Jake Sully, it could have worked, but not necessarily real Matt Damon.
So they have like a marionette then for Jake Sully. What happens when is he still like just a normal Navi, or is he also a marionette?
No, the Navi is still equally good effects. It's just the human is a little puppet.
Okay. Well, there we found a way to improve the movie then. Okay, cool. We do definitely have to talk about the cultural status of this movie. I didn't listen quite as much as Luke did, but you have the ones I went straight to were the 2008 or 2009 versus now cultural reverberations of Avatar, because yeah, it's weird. It's people don't. Well, you talk about a lot, and people are talking about it again because the sequel's out, but people kind of scuttled it to the back of their brain. Even when I think James Cameron, I'm thinking straight T2 aliens most of the time.
I have a couple theories about it. The first one, the nice one, is just that because it's such a unique cinema experience, like we talked about, most people don't rewatch this film at home on DVD. Like, you want to see it in a theater. So I think people saw it that one time in 2009, had a great experience, but then it's not a film they're rewatching over and over, so they're not talking about it in the same way as a Star Wars. It's like going on a vacation rather than like watching a film. It's just a nice, happy memory at the back somewhere. The other thing is, I suspect that a lot of the, like this film, like, oh, it's just Ferngully, oh, it's just Pocahontas, oh, it's done. I think that might have been paid for by certain companies that might mine certain chemicals from the earth who don't want us to like this film.
I don't want to say you're right, but maybe you're right.
Like,
It's
I
it's
wonder
so
why.
interesting, right?
I wonder why
Like,
oil protesters do really dumb things. It's almost like someone wants us to think they're idiots and is paying them to do really dumb things.
Well, the ones in was it North or South Dakota a few years ago? Yeah, there was like I remember that the protesters basically couldn't have their cell phones because there were signals brick walling them or just overclocking their phones. So everyone's batteries were like running out instantly. It was really, yeah, like obviously there's some big money going into shutting those things down.
Well, and recently there was all the protests where they're like throwing oil on paintings or whatever. And everyone's like, that's dumb. Why are you doing that? That's not helping your cause. Totally paid off by oil execs. Like blatant. There's a paper trail. It's not even a conspiracy.
yeah, it's all linked up, and there's so many question marks over it, and it is so interesting that you mentioned that, and how like Avatar suddenly had a really bad rep before it even came out. Like everyone already had these ingrained opinions. There's a whole South Park episode about how it was just Fern Gully, and that happened before the movie even came out. So, things had been bedded in quite early on to sort of like maybe put people on the back foot to be like, oh, maybe I should question, like, what do I really believe the message of this movie?
And I find that annoying because it's so reductive. Because there's only like 8 stories that humans tell. You could do that for any film, right? Oh, Star Wars, it's just the Hidden Fortress. It's just Lord of the Rings, but in space. Like, but the characters and the world that's created is so interesting. Like, fuck off.
I mean, yeah, like some of people's favorite movies, like The Lion King, it's Hamlet. We have about 50.
The Lion King, it's Koba the White Lion, but
well, yeah, exactly. Like
Kimber the White Lion, sorry, but yeah.
And like if you consider like how many versions of Seven Samurai there are now, like it's crazy to think that people like Avatar is one of the only films that kind of has this against it constantly. And it's really interesting as well that they say it's always the same 3 films as well, which is it copies the story of Fern Gully, it covers the story of Pocahontas and of Dancing with Wolves. If it's copying the story of all 3, it's not copied. I mean, that's a big old movie. If it's fitting all 3 of those into it.
Well, the other thing is that feels like it's deliberately trying to say that those 3 films are not worthy. Which again feels like a deliberate, like, let's make it a laughingstock. You're not allowed to take seriously this story of, hey, we did some fucked up shit to a lot of indigenous people around the world.
At the same time, though, Avatar does continue the trope of a white man will save them all. So
I definitely used to think that.
I mean, think it turns blue, but
I think it's a deliberate point that because he has to kill the white man to become the hero. Because I think it's meant to be telling us that, yeah, we all need. If the Na'vi had just beaten the humans, it would be too separate. Whereas the point is that Jake Sully, as our point of view character, has to learn to live like them. So I think it's not just. I mean, it does have a bit of the old white savior about it, and that is obviously problematic in its own way. But as part of its metaphor of like we have to learn to live like in more harmony with nature, it makes a certain sense, I think.
Yeah, I think it's interesting as well. Yeah, like when you consider, he has to give up his white body basically at the end of it. Which, if you compare it to something like Dancing with Wolves, he's jumping between. He doesn't. He is still white at the end of that film.
That would have been interesting in a Civil War movie if he had made that change, though.
Yeah. But yeah, that trope is, well known. And I think James Cameron's openly admitted, he used that trope. He said there's nothing wrong with using tropes. That is just how filmmaking goes. You have to. There's not a film with no tropes.
Just to throw back, we talked about Dune, Matt, that I was worried about the sequels because the first film is a bit white saviory. Apparently the sequels go like, oh no, he's not the good guy. So I'm more interested in reading them now.
Yeah, I was actually thinking of Dune as well. what could you make an effective movie if they entered the new society, the Fremen or the Na'vi, and became like a follower of an actual Na'vi that had skills and such?
Well, you know what almost did that, and I think the problem with the film is that it doesn't go all the way, is The Last Samurai. So The Last Samurai, he meets Ken Watanabe's character, who's such an incredible character. This, like, I can't remember the character name in the film, but basically Saigo Takamori is the real guy he's based on. And he's like this powerful presence, and he's this really deep, interesting character, and he's got this philosophy. And then in the final act, his agency is taken away, and Tom Cruise basically becomes the leader. And I think, yeah, the film would have worked a lot better if Tom had just been a point of view character and it had really portrayed Ken Watanabe's genuine Last Samurai as this heroic mythical figure, and Tom was just there to witness it. Do I think you can do that? Like if he turned up, befriended Sute, and Sute had been the hero. But again, I think in Avatar there is something specific it was trying to say, which is why it doesn't do that.
Stepping up to the power or whatever,
Well,
I guess. Yeah.
Hey, isn't that basically what like Transformers does? Sam meets Optimus Prime, and Optimus Prime's the one who kicks ass.
Yeah, but in that case, we're definitely there for the Transformers. But sure.
Well, yeah, we're basically here for the blue people in this.
So yeah,
I wonder if it's partly to do as well with like he is ex-military, and you know he was basically used by the military not only like during the film, but he lost his legs beforehand in from what I can tell, he lost it during a war, which means he's been used by multiple levels of the military just for his body. And him being able to like choose what he does with his body afterwards is kind of like a big old, like, hey, look, retired, ex-military guys can step away from the system and be part of that change, which I think is an interesting message as well in itself.
Well, the Na'vi do make the point like, oh, you're the first like warrior we've met. Everyone else has been like scientists. At the same time, it's like, well, shouldn't we be sending the we should be sending the qualified scientists to do this. But they really get into it once a warrior shows up, and that's who they adopt fully into their society.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that.
About the whole like glass half. Well, no, I say glass half empty. He says he's just completely empty.
Yeah. My cup's empty. Trust me. I like that.
So it's kind of a sci-fi born on the 4th of July. Okay.
The other thing, so a lot of the times we've talked about films, and Matt's criticism has been it's too on the nose. I think as a culture, we should ditch the criticism on the nose. Because on the nose is where you're meant to rain punches. I don't think that's a criticism. I think if people, like, if the highest grossing film of all time was this on the nose and people still didn't get the message, maybe it's not on the nose enough.
Or maybe they got the message and just didn't want to remember the message because it's too inconvenient.
So hopefully the last 30 minutes of Way of Water, James Cameron just walks onto screen and like,
here's my PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah,
we need to save the ocean right now.
Truth too.
I do have to throw out just as a fun fact, I was watching Avatar, and I was also watching The Sleeping Beauty for another podcast, and now I have like Aurora being chased by the horse things in Avatar in my mind. Like that, I feel like that's why I watched last night. So
what a combination.
Yeah, that's kind of fun.
So Matt, you're into like meditation, and so you have a bit of Buddhist knowledge. Tell us about avatars.
You mean as in their religion or whatever?
Yeah, so before like this film and the Nickelodeon show, I'd only really heard the word avatar to describe like the player character in a video game.
Yeah, I mean it's basically the same thing though, isn't it, right? If life's a game and you're the avatar of your own, right? So well, in Japan we have all the sacred sites, right? So you got the Tree of Souls or all that sort of stuff. I do remember going up to near Kyoto, a place called Kurama, where someone pointed out, oh, that's the tree where, like the universe sprang forth from. I'm like, whoa, why haven't I heard of this tree before? Even if I don't believe in that. And it was like it had been hit like lightning. It wasn't like a beautiful soul tree, but yeah. That was kind of a ramble. I wasn't quite sure which direction to take your question.
Just like in like the original sense, what does the word avatar mean? Because I feel like it's entered a lot of people's lexicon just as a sci-fi thing and a technology thing, but obviously it had a long history before that.
Yeah, well, that's I know way less about Hinduism, but the whole like people are like, oh, why do they have so many gods? It's well, every god's just a different avatar of everything, right? It's just
Mm.
seeing the like that's the whole namaste thing. I see the God within you, right? So it's like I'm looking at your avatar, but I see you. That's exactly what the Navi say, right?
Mm. Okay,
I
that
don't
makes
know if that's a
sense.
good answer, but I felt like it sounded slightly smarter.
Yeah, I hadn't connected Namaste to ICU, so that was something cool for me at
I
least.
I had neither, to be honest. So yay. Three
The
cheers
other
for
thing,
spitballing.
the other thing I really wanted to bring up in this podcast was since seeing Avatar, I've learned about the way that trees actually do talk to each other and form like, I mean, maybe not quite a consciousness, but a forest does have a mind, and like different node trees share the information between all the other trees. Um, and it is something that like Grace says in this film, it's not just a tree. Like one tree is part of the other trees around it. And scientists have like started to say like, hey, you can log in a way where if you avoid these specific trees, you can do way less damage to the forest because they are like hub trees or mother trees. And it takes me back to like the Ents in Lord of the Rings, where the trees talk and think just at a time scale that's imperceptible to us.
Mm.
And like that does ring true. Like, sure, a forest can't think a thought at the speed I can, but over, give it a year, and it can react to something and do something to help its fellow trees and have basically thoughts. And I think something that this film gets into is the Navi, like the earliest human cultures, like prehistoric, don't see themselves as separate from the other animals on their planet. They're just one of them. Whereas humans, especially in like the Judeo-Christian like culture, there's the animal kingdom and us, and we're above and we're separate and we're different and they're here to serve us, sort of thing. And I think to keep surviving on this planet, we need to eliminate that idea.
That's
And I think
another
maybe that's the
cultural
biggest message from Avatar.
that's another cultural beat that kind of made a big impression and then kind of faded away. And I'm not saying Avatar's faded away. It's just like, the messages aren't on people's mind. But in the 70s, there was The Secret Life of Plants, very much getting into that sort of thing.
Mm.
It was a book. Stevie Wonder actually recorded an album, The Secret Life of Plants, because it fascinated him so much. And but then everyone was expecting the next big Stevie Wonder album. Was like, why did he just put out like 2 LPs of blips and bloops? So they were cool blips and bloops, but yeah, that confused people because yeah, he had been won over, and I guess that would have been James Cameron's formative year. So that's certainly a book or some ideas that might have stuck in his mind when directing this movie.
Mm. Yeah, it's really interesting. I think, especially when you're talking about like, yeah, that interconnectivity and also the idea that the Navi are connected to the world and they feel level playing field. And I
Mm.
think that's how I think people misread Avatar a lot of the time in that we okay, this is a humanity thing. Whenever we watch a film, we are immediately connected immediately to the human characters. It doesn't
Mm.
matter whether the human characters are good or bad. We immediately have a connection to them because we recognize them, and it's level. We see them as our equals, which is why some people who watch Avatar don't see the Navi as being like as developed, like they see them as being less than
Mm.
humans. When in reality, no, they're not. They are equal, and they just have a different way of life, which clearly they love. They love how they
Mm.
connect with the planet. They don't need to advance. They don't need human technology to cure diseases or anything. They have their own way of dealing with things, and I think Cameron's trying to teach us that, to be like, hey, look, there's other cultures who don't want to, he's spoken. I think he did a whole documentary. It's on that extended edition on one of the other discs, where he did a whole trip to Brazil, try to save a river from having a dam built, and it's because all these local tribes were going to lose their land because of that dam being built, and he was using Avatar as a way to teach people about that.
Well,
and I think that kind of shows what he wants.
Yeah, Western society in particular just has a trouble saying, when is it enough? There's a point where things are enough. I mean, again, technology, I swear to God, my phone worked a lot better in 2015 than it does now. Why can't I just have the one I had 7 years ago again? That worked great. That being a really vapid example, there's much better ones, but that was just the first one that came to mind.
Well, look at the rise of like the mega billionaires we have today. Like, I'm pretty sure it was enough for them a long time ago, but they still want more and more and more.
The whole scientific question of like, just because we can do it, should we?
This is it. And I think it's really interesting when you look at the state that humanity is in at the start of Avatar, is that they are having to literally go to this other planet and mine its resources because we've screwed up our own planet that much that we need to do it. And for me, I don't particularly want humanity to win at all in any way in the Avatar series. I am more than happy to watch them fail and for humanity to die off in the Avatar universe. That is their own doing. Leave the Na'vi alone.
I brought up Transformers earlier, but the thing you were talking about with people struggle to identify with the Na'vi, I think a lot of people have the same thing. For me, I don't care about the humans in Transformers. The robots are enough of a story for me. And that's especially because I grew up reading Transformers comics, where often there are no humans for 20 issues at a time. Whereas you read a lot of the critical reports and it's like, oh yeah, the robots were talking or something, but the humans, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, you don't get it. The film's not about them. I mean, obviously, not on the same... In terms of storytelling, I'm not trying to say Transformers is on the level of Avatar, but there are stories there if you actually pay attention to what the robots are saying, but no one does.
I definitely thought it was interesting this time hearing like there's not a spot of green on Earth anymore, which made me think of Silent Running, this kind of having a similar message and a less psychotic lead. So I guess that's cool.
The line that I didn't notice before that really, really spoke to me this time, it's a real subtle little moment. It's when Jake is fully getting immersed in the Na'vi culture and Grace is trying to make him eat in his human body. And he says, like, as a really throwaway line, like, I made a kill today. At least I know where that came from. And that just shows that he's thinking like one of them. And he's thinking like a person who does think about where their food comes from and wants to eat naturally. But it's said so in such a naturalistic way. It's not like a big line. It's just a genuine reaction to someone who now sees the world that way. And like, that's the moment where you can tell he's flipped. And it's a really nice little subtle line that I hadn't picked up on before.
I think that pairs up so nicely with, like over that time period where he is going into that Avatar body more and more, he's like, his human body is just wilted away. He is not eating, they complain about him basically stinking up the place as well. She basically force feeds him because he's not taking care of himself.
Yeah, you know what he doesn't appreciate enough is that if you were on the Avatar program, you get to have 2 dinners every day.
Yeah, man. Never full. Always eating.
Yeah. I'd love to be able to eat 6 meals a day.
This is it. You know when you're like, oh, I've finished my food, but I feel like I really want some more of this. This is, I've gone to an all-you-can-eat buffet. All right, I'll be 1 minute. I go back, get into my Avatar body, come back to the buffet, round 2.
Yeah, the amount of times I've been like, oh, that was good, I'm going to get seconds. And it's like, I can only eat 1 bite of seconds. It turns out I'm full.
We usually, as we're winding up, get to the question of does it hold up. I guess we've been talking about that like half of this entire time anyway.
This is one of those ones where like oh, it holds up better than it did when it came out. Like RoboCop, I think this is a film where like 10 years from now and 20 years from now and 30 years from now, we're going to be living in a shittier, worse world and thinking like, oh, Avatar's even more true than it was when it came out. Depressingly. Hopefully, unlike RoboCop, it will have good sequels.
Or we will find out very soon, won't we? Shaun, do you want to throw out Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, yeah, it's interesting you bring up like RoboCop and like those sort of movies which predicts the future in a way. And I think Cameron's got a habit with this as well. Like his work with the sort of Terminator and talking about like artificial intelligence and things like that, and that interconnectivity of all technology. He kind of predicted all that as well. And we're heading closer and closer to that kind of area of things. And I think with these Avatar sequels, he has a chance of like basically predicting the next like 20, 30 years of human society, how things could be about to go.
Mm-hmm.
And so with the new
one,
I'm
no
hoping...
one's gonna listen to him.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I do hope the new one just pushes the good ship major motion picture in a slightly different direction, because I guess it's just in the eddies right now. So that's
what's really depressing is that I'm looking at it like, oh, here comes the outsider that's gonna, redirect cinema and save us from the empty. It's also Disney.
Yeah. They got...
You know what? I will like make you feel more positive about it. Disney basically have no involvement in it aside from the promotional side of it.
Oh, I'm sure James Cameron had an airtight contract that he has total control.
Trust me, he would not let anyone touch this who he doesn't want to. He's one of these people, he has a reputation of some like unhappy execs in previous business deals. And I think just at this point, he's probably like, no one's messing with this. This is my baby. You come in for it. You will never see another dime of this.
Well, there's the famous story, right, where they were trying to tell him what to do with Avatar, and he's like, I built this studio with Titanic. Like, well, that's the big irony of James Cameron is his films have these like anti-capitalist sort of be careful of technology messages. Meanwhile, they make the most money in the world and push the envelope of technology. So...
And then he gets to dive to the bottom of the ocean. So win-win.
Yep. He's having a good time all round. He gets to make those films and also just have the best hobbies he could ever imagine. Just do whatever you want, mate.
We covered The Abyss recently for this same month, and I've got so much respect for the guy who's just like built a huge motion picture career out of I want to go on submarines.
Honestly, the Abyss is so good as well. Like that, you can clearly see like the influences of that film where he's like, I've got bigger ideas than I could do in The Abyss. I could do this with Avatar later on. And I think The Way of Water is definitely going to include some of that elements as well, of especially the underwater technology. Like he's about to push it beyond anyone's comprehension.
Yeah. Well, the only problem I have with The Abyss is that it is a very slow film. That's because he could probably only afford to show us a couple of effect shots throughout the film. So hopefully he can do a cool underwater film whilst also being interesting this time.
Yes.
We'll see.
A moist film. I guess we're gonna wrap it up for today. So Shaun, can you tell everyone about your podcast and what you do? Well, we already kind of know what you do there, but maybe some more detail.
Yeah, of course. My podcast is Sivako Road to Avatar. For those who don't know, Sivako translates from Na'vi to Rise to the Challenge, which was the whole idea of this podcast, which was that I'm rising to the challenge to learn as much as I can about Avatar in the lead up to, well, first of all, The Way of Water. But guess what? I'm probably gonna have to just keep doing this podcast for the next 8 years with all the other sequels going as well.
Well, the next 8 years until the next sequel.
Well, it could be an 8-year break between them. We'll see. It's either every 2 years or every 8 years. We'll find out, I'm sure. But yeah, it's a good time to like. I don't just talk about Avatar. I do cover other topics. We've covered other films of James Cameron's filmography, and like we're probably going to just keep exploring different areas over the coming months. And obviously, we're about to have the release of the new film now's a good time to jump on because there's going to be a lot of interesting stuff.
Yeah, can recommend. I hadn't heard of your podcast until we were like, oh shit, we haven't found a guest for Avatar. And I've binged like 5 or 6 episodes in the last few days, so can recommend. If you've enjoyed this podcast, you can find us on Twitter at MLSFS Pod. We're also on Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Just search Matt and Luke Sci-Fi Sanctuary. And if you want to help support the podcast, find the other podcasts that me and Matt make, you can go to patreon.com/podcastio.
Roll, it's the Marines. So I'm trying to do the new monster.
I see you, Raggy.
Okay.
Go on then, Sean. You got to do a Scooby-Doo before we let you leave.
All right. Let me think. What could I go for? I'm trying to think of a good line from it. Oh. No, I can't even think of one. This is the problem. People always say there's no memorable lines. There isn't a lot of memorable lines, especially when you're put on the spot.
That's okay. I can make the cut before Luke puts you on the spot.
Okay. You've been saved. Saved by the edit. Like George Lucas.
Okay. But yeah, thanks for jumping in. Sorry, I gotta run because I have to take out the garbage, eat some breakfast, and then I have to do that Sleeping Beauty podcast where I'm going to imagine the horse creatures chasing down Aurora. So
Nice. I can piece the 2 podcasts together to find out what the full story is.
yeah, I could just kind of like splice them together here and there and make it like super confusing. It'll be fun.